And away we go here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate everybody being here on a late Sunday night, 11 Eastern. Let's do it. I believe we've arrived at the conclusion of the Sweet 16 weekend in basketball. So we've got a Final Four. Not that I could tell you who those four teams are, but we more importantly have a Final 16, Sweet 16 in college football, and we've got the phone lines open at 860-499-3332. Just a little fun project I'm working on that has led us to the Sweet 16, starting out with 128. We've got 130 in the FBS. We tacked off 2 just to make it nice and even for a tournament bracket of 128 down to 64, 32, 16. That's where we stand right now, and we will play off the final 16. Would love to hear what you have to say about our mythical tournament of 128 teams for the 2021 season. Rankings, tournament seeds, courtesy, the Voice of College Football, and really anything else you've got to talk about concerning college football. It doesn't have to be, as you well know, about the topic of the night. 860-499-3332. And I guess we will get right to it. Our first caller of the night. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Hello.
Hey, it's Porter Osborne.
Porter, how's it going?
Hey, good evening. It's the first time I've called.
Well, it's good to have you here.
Well, I'm going to start a tradition now. I'm going to start, the way I'm going to structure my calls is I'm going to get nostalgic, and then I'm going to push an agenda that I think is important for college football. Is that okay?
Yeah, as long as it's clean and respectful, and it would be nice if it was smart. That would be good. But okay, you're going to start a tradition, and we're going to push a narrative or agenda. Okay, I'm ready for this, Porter. Let's go.
All right. I'm a Georgia grad. I'll go ahead and mention that. So I'm looking at it from SEC glasses. So
yep.
And you're probably going to be surprised when I say this, but first thing I want to talk about is the agenda that I'm going to push every time I call in. And that's doing away with these ridiculous conference championship games. This is the way I would structure things once we expand the playoffs. And you may think I'm crazy because the SEC has really done well during this era of the playoffs. But the way I feel right now is if you expand this thing to 12 games, 12 people get in the playoff, which I love. I love the idea. I think more the merrier. I think it's better for the sport. It brings in more people, which is great. Let's take this scenario with Texas A&M in 2020. If you're sitting there, number 5 at the end of the college football rankings, that last before the conference championship games, why? If you're Texas A&M and you've already expanded the playoff, why would you want to play in the SEC championship game? And I've got some follow-up commentary on that. But let me ask you that first.
Well, Porter, that all depends on how the tournament, the playoff, is structured. There's a number of reasons why you may want to win a championship. You may want a bye. You may want a home playoff game. You may want to be able to secure the playoff spot as well, depending on, again, it depends on what the playoff format is.
Right, but what I'm hearing the preliminary structure is going to be, I believe, 4 teams get byes. Is that right? And the top 4 teams that have won conferences, I think that's right. So if you're, and the SEC is finding one of those 4, I would imagine. So if you're one of those, you get a bye. So what? You had to just have a huge knife fight in your conference championship game. Why would you want to do that? Let's just use the Texas A&M scenario from 2020. If you're Texas A&M, why could you just say, we're good. We're good at number 5. We don't have to go to Atlanta and play. I guess that year it was Florida. Again, they already beat them previously that season. Why couldn't you just say, we'll host the first round and we'll host somebody like I said, Cincinnati, or we'll host Penn State or whoever? Why would you want to have that knife fight within your conference? Why don't you just wait and play the next week and possibly host a game? Even if you don't have to host a game, be willing to go somewhere and play that first round.
Gotcha.
I just
okay. So I think we've answered your question. It's that I understand your point. You are elevating Texas A&M in this case. There's a zillion cases we could bring up, but in this case, you're elevating Texas A&M to some kind of status that they are going to just trounce a first round opponent. Well, if we have 12 teams in the playoff, I hardly believe that 2020 Texas A&M team could look past anybody. They didn't have that impressive of a season in regards to who they beat, aside from Florida. But regardless of who it is, that's exactly why you want to avoid that. You would play an SEC championship game and might most likely get 3 weeks off before you would have to play your next opponent in the second round of the playoff. And that would be an opponent, understand this, Porter, this would be an opponent who got beat up in a first round game. This is an opponent that exposed themselves strategically in a first round game that you would have film on that just played. And they may be missing a player or two that was injured in the first round game. Who knows? Jamison Williams, John Mechie, somebody of that ilk for that particular team. So there's a ton of advantages to getting a bye. I don't like buys. They don't make sense in college football. I've outlined this a number of times, and I certainly could do it here again. But this is one of the reasons why you would want to buy. I don't necessarily see, let's say it's 2020, and I'm trying to formulate the teams in my mind on who would be there in a 12-team playoff. But in a 5-12 game, maybe they're playing Indiana or Ole Miss. Again, we'd have to go back and look at the rankings, but that's irregardless. They're playing who we believe to be the 12th best team in the country. I think that they would want to avoid that.
Well, I disagree. I think if you just beat LSU and after Thanksgiving,
sure,
and you have a chance to rest that next week and not go to Atlanta,
yep,
I would rather do that and go play Ole Miss or whoever you said. I guess my point is
you would rather not play an SEC championship game, have to play sooner, risk possibly getting whomever hurt in that game, getting beat up in that game. You're going to be playing a really good team. You're not going to be playing Vanderbilt. You're not going to be playing Kansas. You're going to be playing roughly the 12th best team in the country. Maybe you're playing North Carolina. Maybe you're playing Penn State or Wisconsin. You're playing a team that can beat you, number one. Number one, you're risking losing. If you're the 5th best team in the country and you're playing the 12th best team in the country, you probably have like a 60-40 chance of winning that game. And if you're at home, we'll up at this 70-30. So you're taking a large risk in losing the game, first and foremost. So you may never see the next game. And then number two, again, you could lose significant. Well, what if you play that second game against one of the top 4 teams in the country and you don't have your best wide receiver and you're starting outside linebacker suddenly, or you're just banged up. You played a 27-24 game down to the last minute and you're beat up.
I think you're proving my point because you're not having to play that first weekend in December. Either you're getting the rest or the team that's getting the bye is having to play that first week of December. You get the bye. They don't get it. So it's kind of like you pick your poison. You want the off week, the first week of December, or do you want it, the following week if you're able to get in the top 4? So I don't know. I think that this is we have a chance to have a very exciting era of college football coming up. I love the playoff. The playoff is what the sport is becoming, and I think that's a good thing. So, in my opinion, is if everything is about the playoff, and that's my opinion, but I think a lot of other people feel the same way, then what do these conference championships, what kind of cachet do they bring? I mean, I'm more proud as a Georgia fan and grad. I'm more proud of that Rose Bowl win and that Orange Bowl win, those 2 wins in the national semifinals than I am any conference championship I've ever won, because that got me to the national championship game. Now, Georgia's won conference championships and got us to national championships, but in this era, I mean, Georgia has more. Let's just take at the semifinal round, not the national championship that we just won. Let's take the semifinal round. Georgia has 2 wins, 2 playoff wins. That's more than just those 2 wins before they beat Alabama. That's more wins than the entire Pac-12 conference. That's more wins than any team from the states of Florida, Texas, California, any team from the Big 12 conference. Yeah, I'm sorry. They have more playoff wins than the entire Big 12 conference, because the Big 12 conference does not even have a playoff win. So my point is, I think we're really devaluing these conference championships. And the way I would do it, from the SEC point of view, is go to like a pod scenario, play 9 conference games, and then the top team in the rankings at the end of the season is crowned the SEC champ, and then let as many of our teams go into the 12-team playoff. It'd be a hell of a playoff.
Well, I think that your original point, I get your point. It makes sense, but I was just providing the counterpoint, which I think also makes sense. And maybe that's something that the committee would have to look into to make sure that the conference championships mean something. Your opinion about the conference championships and the value that they have or that they don't have versus the playoff games is just, that's personal preference. That's an opinion. Certainly, I would rather, as a fan, win a conference championship and not make the playoff, or not win a playoff game versus winning a playoff game and then losing the national championship game. I think it's 6-1, half a dozen the other if you don't win the national championship. Until we have a legitimate playoff, which we don't have now, until we have a legitimate playoff, which, again, we've got an invitational. Teams have to be invited to play. It's not a playoff system that holds true merit based on it's a selection process that's based on a committee selecting teams. Now, they typically do a decent job of it. But I am old school. I would like the conference championships to be meaningful, and I believe that they are. And I would hate to go to a situation in which they were not. So I think the committee was looking to get that done in building this 12-team playoff to have a playoff in which, yes, you had to earn or there was a reward for winning your conference.
But let me ask you this way. There have been, since the playoff started in 14, how many seasons is that? Is that 7, 8 seasons?
There's been 8.
What is that? Okay, 8 seasons. Of those 8 seasons, how many Big 12 champions have we crowned?
8.
I know the answer. I mean, I was just trying to be funny, but and how many Big 12 playoff wins has the Big 12 conference produced?
0.
Which is more exclusive?
Well, obviously, when you've got 5 conferences and actually have 10 conferences, if you're talking about all of college football, and you've got only one national championship, then you're obviously going to have more exclusivity. That could be stated about a lot of things. That's simple math. Yeah. I'm just, I understand your point. You're playoff centric, and the sport's becoming playoff centric, and the people watching here, for the most part, just care about the playoffs. And as soon as we start talking playoffs and playoff teams, that's what people want to hear about. But I would like to maintain the value of the conference championships. Otherwise, why be in conferences? Who cares about the conferences? If we want to go your full throttle idea, why don't we do it the right way? Blow up the conferences, just have 128 teams out playing, and we'll give them all a schedule and they can just play. We won't have any conferences, and we'll select the 12 best teams. Why play in conferences if the conference championship doesn't matter? Then why play in a conference? That's kind of stupid.
Well, I think part of it's cultural. I think part of it's cultural. I think part of it is travel. You don't want to, have go crisscross in the United States.
Well, you wouldn't have to crisscross the United States. You could still play teams in your region. You just wouldn't play in conferences.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it or not, I don't have a problem with the way you're headed with that argument. So, all right, not to get too serious, let me do this the nostalgic part of this, because I love your show. I love I don't want to get too confrontational with you, but
no, don't worry about that. I appreciate your thoughts. I appreciate your idea.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring it up. Making ways of making it better. What is your favorite college football SI cover?
So you've noticed I got a few back here on the wall. That's an easy choice. It was one of the first ones I ever received. So I started to get SI. The first SI I ever received was a shot of Kenny Stabler, and it said something like "The Snake is Back." And it had Kenny Stabler on the cover in training camp, and it was in July or August of 1979. Okay, fast forward about 3 or 4 months, and I know that was a long, long time ago, and I got SIs pretty consistently for about, oh my goodness, like 25 years. But my favorite was in the first 3 or 4 months. It was a shot of our Art Schlechter, Ohio State quarterback, after they beat Michigan to finish undefeated, and it says Rose Bowl bound on the cover. That by far is my favorite.
That's one of mine too. That's one of my favorites, believe it or not. Even
really?
A Southern guy.
Okay.
In 1970, what a great season. Sorry about how his life turned out, but yeah, I love that. It's just Rose Bowl bound. I mean, he's rolling out to the right. He's got his arm cocked.
Well done.
It's a beautiful SI cover. I was 9 years old when it came out, and I was one of those guys that read SI from cover to cover. I loved it.
Yep.
There was another one that same year that was probably my favorite. The Schleister one is very good. But do you remember earlier in the season there were 8 teams that were undefeated at all?
Porter. I was going to say the same thing. I was going to bring up the exact same cover, even though it wasn't like aesthetically a beautiful cover, not kind of like a beautiful picture like there typically was in those days. People would just wait to get the SI cover because it was usually just a thrilling shot of a beautiful game or whatever. Yes, I know exactly where you're going. And as soon as I mentioned Art Schlechter and thought 1979, I thought of that cover with the 8 quarterbacks all saying they're number one with the number one finger and who's number one. Yes, absolutely.
That's probably my favorite cover of all time. As a 9-year-old kid, that to me, even though the Falcons were pretty good in the late 70s, college football was king in Atlanta. And to me, those guys were bigger than life. And got a chance. I was quail hunting down in South Georgia. Got a chance to one of the guys on that cover was Jimmy Jordan with Florida State, and got to go quail hunting with him. Just randomly, he was in the other quail hunting group, and he got a big kick out of me mentioning that cover. But it was Florida State, Alabama, Houston, Ohio State. I can't remember the others. Oh, Oklahoma, I think. But
I think Nebraska was in there.
Anyway, enjoy the conversation. I don't mean to monopolize the time, but love what you do.
Great stuff, Porter. I appreciate you calling, and don't be a stranger. Call back.
Absolutely. Good night.
Good night. Have a great night, Porter. Thank you so much. Appreciate the conversation. Appreciate that, a lot of these things, there's not a right or wrong. Conferences, conference championships, are they important? Are bowl games important? We have that debate every bowl season. Do you care about the bowl games? Are they stupid? Are they outdated? Are they exhibitions? Or are they important? To me, I love the bowl games, and they're still important to me. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello, Mark. It's the real MVP. How you doing this evening?
It is the real MVP.
Well, as a Kentucky fan, bowl games are important to me as well.
Well, when you win them all, sure. What's that, 4 straight, 5 straight?
4 straight, almost 5. We lost in 17, I think it was, maybe 18 at this point. That in the final seconds of the game, because we decided to go for 2 against Northwestern in the Music City Bowl, and we didn't convert. So that was the last time we lost a non-conference game as well. Got the longest record for the most non-conference wins in a row.
I got to say, you keep track
Mark,
of some interesting numbers there. Did you figure that out yourself, or did you see that somewhere?
Well, during the Citrus Bowl, the winner of that game would have had the longest non-conference streak in the country.
Okay. Kentucky last lost to a non-conference team against Northwestern in that bowl game.
Yep.
All right, and that was the 2017 season. Alabama lost to Clemson the next year. Okay. All right.
And well, the reason for it, Mark, is according to the SEC rules, is you only have to schedule 1 Power 5 opponent per year.
Yep.
For our case, Kentucky, we've already got one in Louisville. So what do you do when you got 1 Power 5 conference and you just want to win games? Schedule cupcakes.
Well,
Austin Peay, come on down.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of Murray State, Austin Peay, Eastern, Western Kentucky on that Kentucky schedule. A lot of those. You guys bring that down, those MAC teams from time to time as well.
Oh, yeah.
I will say that I'm going to put you in this category right behind Iowa State and Iowa. So I put Iowa State at the top of my I make this comment every time I run down the schedules, which I will be doing here, I guess, in the next few weeks, run through all the schedules. But Iowa State, they have the most boring schedule in the country. Iowa State does, for these 2 reasons. Number one, they play in a conference where you don't even have to look to see who they play because they play everyone. So there's no imagination or creativity to that. I actually like that, but at the same time, it's boring because you know what their schedule is going to be in the conference. Well, then Iowa State always plays Iowa. So you know that they're always going to play Iowa out of conference. And much like Kentucky, they don't play anybody else. They choose, we're not going to play anybody else that's decent. No more Power 5s. So Iowa State is the most boring schedule in the country because they play the same schedule every year. And then I typically make the comment that Iowa's next after that, and only because they play in the Big Ten and they mix up the schedule, and there are various opponents that they switch up and can play differently each season. But Iowa, I criticize them as well. Why don't you play somebody else besides Iowa State non-conference? They don't. And now I'll tack on Kentucky because you're perfectly right. I should criticize the Cats as well, because when is the last time Kentucky played a Power 5 opponent other than Louisville?
Well, I don't know, Mark. And to be completely honest with you, I kind of like it this way.
Oh, come on.
I mean, it's not against the rules. I want to be good, Mark, okay? I want to be good. I want to have 10 wins.
No, you want to have a good record. You want to have a good record.
Yes. Yes.
Well, you're Kentucky now.
At one point in this,
you're not old Kentucky. You're new Kentucky. You can take the challenge now. You're not old Kentucky.
We can't. No, we can't, Mark.
You can do it.
those 10-win seasons.
You
We're
can
a
do
7-5
it.
team every year.
I'm going to find the last time Kentucky played. This might be a while.
Yeah, you might have to. I mean, we were still playing them back when we were scrubs, like bona fide scrubs.
I don't know who this would have been. At what point Kentucky would have played somebody else? You know,
yeah, but I mean,
I'm going to make a guess. I'm sorry. I keep cutting you off because I keep thinking of something. You know, I'm going to make a guess and I'm combing through the years. I'm down to 2012. I know who it's going to be. It's going to be, I believe it's going to be Indiana. Kentucky used to play Indiana all the time.
Maybe. I don't know. I was
they
probably
used to play,
before I was even around.
Yeah, they used to play Indiana every year. And I believe we're going to find this here pretty soon. Yep, I think it's coming. Indiana, 2005. There it is. 2005, and going back before that, Kentucky and Indiana played every year.
Oh. That would have been a heck of a game a few years ago in 2020 if that game was played.
Yes, they beat. They lost to the mighty Hoosiers, 4-7 Hoosiers, 38-14 in 2005. That was quite the battle between 4-7 and 3-8.
That sounds about right. I mean, our program history. I know I'm expecting on the all-time rankings Kentucky to be right above Vanderbilt, maybe above Missouri.
That's coming out in the morning.
Look at our record,
the SEC standings are coming out in the morning.
I'm not expecting a whole lot. If you look at our record, all-time record against Vanderbilt, we're only up 5 or 6 games on them. So that's where we've been historically. We've been in the toilet. We're still behind South Carolina, even though we've won 8 out of the last 9 games.
I will tell you this. Yeah, it's pretty much in every category. It's quite a race between Kentucky, South Carolina, and Mississippi State.
Well, that was the one team we could be. I think since this is another quirky stat. I think since 2005, the home team I think 2005. The home team in Mississippi State, Kentucky has won the game. It's been some crazy streak that's been going on. And it happened this year, too, when Mississippi State, when we went down there and we lost us, got embarrassed. But let me ask you, Mark, if you had to change your schedule, who would you have us compete against instead of one of these scrubs?
Ooh. Well, you've got 4 non-conference games. At least I can excuse Iowa and Iowa State because they only have 3 non-conference games. So if they pick up another Power 5, they've really sandwiched themselves into, and Iowa and Iowa State have obviously been pretty darn good football teams here recently. So they've buried themselves into a situation where they pretty much only play 1 scrub. But with Kentucky, you've got 4 games to work with here. So Louisville and then the other 3. Okay. Kentucky. I would like some kind of nice regional matchup against, well, this wouldn't necessarily be a Power 5, but it would be like a Power 5 if they played Cincinnati.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a pretty good team, Mark.
Yeah, they are a pretty good team. Well, if they weren't a good team, I wouldn't have brought them up. If they were some group of 5, like, some MAC team, I wouldn't have brought them up. I
think the reason we don't do it as well is because what are we going to get out of it if we win? We ain't going to make the college football playoff.
Well, you're right. And with Kentucky, until recently, there's concern about making a bowl game. This is like the NC State. This is the NC State approach. I credit but don't respect NC State for having this approach. If you look at their schedule, they go well beyond Kentucky because they don't schedule anybody. They have the last couple of years. They've picked up a West Virginia type game, Mississippi State. But for a long, long time, it was just a lot of VMI and James Madison and East Carolina and Old Dominion so that they could make bowl games. Dave Doran, going into last season, 2020, had won 38% of his games in the conference, but he was still going to bowl games every year because the formula was, you go 3-5 in the conference, and you at least go 3-1, if not 4-0 non-conference, and you go 7-5, and you go to a bowl game, even though you suck in conference at 3-5. Kentucky, you're better than that. Schedule North Carolina. How about Virginia Tech, NC State? Again, I like that Cincinnati matchup.
Well, call the athletic director, go down to Mark Stoops' office or somebody, or make a fit on Twitter and see if they do something.
I'm going to appeal to their pride to say you're not that Kentucky anymore. You're not 2005 Kentucky. You're the new Kentucky. You're a football power.
Yeah, maybe. Well, since we're going in this direction, I kind of want to bring up the schedule, okay?
Okay.
Because I don't believe schedules are just in a vacuum, one game win, one game loss. You have to have context around the game, okay? So Kentucky plays Georgia at the end of the season. Now, what I'm about to say is to get people upset, first off. And second of all, I don't think it is going to happen, but I think it is under the radar. Okay?
Okay.
So I just want to preference that. So Georgia has to go to at Mississippi State and then at Kentucky. Kentucky plays at home against Vanderbilt the week before. Now, I'm not saying Kentucky's going to beat Georgia. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. But what I am saying is Kentucky can only be down 3, maybe entering the fourth quarter, and might have a chance if the ball bounces their way. Because back-to-back road games are really hard for any team, regardless of who they play. And if Kentucky's in the race at the end of the season, I mean, that place can get loud. We disrupted Florida, and our crowd beat Florida. So we can do it. Even though we don't have as many people, we're just as loud and energetic because of the environment, and the road trip is harder than most schools because we're so far up north, and it's going to be super cold for Georgia.
Okay. Well, you put together.
So I'd give it a.
It's a nice set of points that you've put together there. You've thought of a scenario that's nobody's going to be on the bandwagon thinking Georgia's going to lose that game, but hey, we're going to see our handful of games or more next season that we're not expecting. And
right.
And my typical approach to trying to find those kind of upsets would be that, some of the factors that you just brought up play into that, but also that we're looking for a good opponent. Obviously, the underdog has to be capable. And in this case, Kentucky's what I'm going to be expecting to be a top 20 or 25 team in the country. So,
yeah. And now I understand losing Wan'Dale Robinson, probably one of the best receivers in all of football, losing Liam Cohen's top 5, maybe the best offensive coordinator in college football for 1 year is going to hurt Kentucky. But upsets do happen, and you can't just go chalk. And I understand Georgia is the more talented team. But if the more talented team won every single year, Alabama would have, 12 national championships in a row?
Pretty much.
I mean, they've been the most. So, and they've got the greatest coach, and they don't win it every year. So it's not crazy. It's not like I'm just completely off the rocker.
I think at this point, Alabama's slipping quite a bit. Let's see. They've won, what's Saban won? 6 national championships there, right?
Yeah. One of the last 4, Mark.
At one of the last 4. At one point, I think he was at 50% against the nation, but 6, 07 through 21, 15 years at Alabama. So it's going to be tough for him to catch up. 6 out of 15 now.
Yeah, I mean, they could do it, but I think Ohio State's going to give them a run for their money this year. If they could just shore up that defensive line, and I think they got a real shot.
I posted a video today, did not post a video. I cut a video today for the Ohio State channel with a few reasons why Ohio State may be much better on defense. And I do expect them to be much better on defense. 2 of the studs that they brought in the recruiting class, CJ Hicks and also Sonny Styles, were 2 of the top 10 players in the country in the 2022 class. And I know that they're youngsters, just freshmen, but they're going to be counted upon. And they brought in an all Big 12 safety from Oklahoma State, Tanner McAllister. So I expect Ohio State to be, they better be much better on defense if they want to be playing Georgia and Alabama.
Yeah. And I mean, for an Ohio State defense, last year was pathetic.
Yes.
I mean, they got dominated by 2 Pac-12 teams. That's unexcusable and unacceptable.
You're right. You're right.
Well, the final thing I'll mention is about your rankings, Mark, because that was what the title of this video was about, after all, or your tournament, I should say. And how surprised were you that I had Indiana over Fresno State in the first round?
So I forget what the timing was of that, but I saw your comment, and I think I already posted that. I don't remember. That was the first round. Yes. So anyway, whatever the situation was, yeah, you read my mind. You made your pick. I made my pick. We synced up. We both saw Indiana as being, a team that could jump out there and pull off that upset against Fresno State in round 1. So we were on the same page.
And the other game, I'm surprised you didn't go with Iowa over Utah later on in your bracket. I mean, they got the same record. I know it was a simple point, but I think Iowa and Utah have the same record, but
Sure.
Iowa's in a much tougher conference.
Yep.
So I would have gone with Iowa just in that case.
Okay.
So why did you go with Utah?
I think they're a better team, and it's tough for Iowa to score points. And I think that we saw in the Rose Bowl that Utah is capable of scoring. I just think that Utah is a better football team than Iowa. The 21 team, I think, was better if they had played. Just again, Ohio State was missing 4 tremendous players out of that game. I get it, but still, Utah took Ohio State to the wire. That was Ohio State. That wasn't Iowa. And Ohio State and Iowa, it's a pretty good gap there.
Okay. That's respectable. I can see that. Well, that's all I got for you, Mark. Your Notre Dame channel is 7 full subscribers away from 1,000. So let's see if we can hit that tonight.
Yes, the real MVPs making a call out for everyone. While we are on the air, we would love to see our Notre Dame channel hit 1,000 subs. Let's do it while we're on the air. Get on over there, subscribe to the Notre Dame channel. If it turns your stomach to think about being subscribed to the Notre Dame channel, please do it for me, do it for us, do it for the growth of our networks. Then you can unsubscribe when we get to like 1,100. Unsubscribe if you really want to. Thanks for the call,
See you
man.
next time, Mark.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Have a good one. All right. So, yes, I did serve up my 128 team tournament. I rolled the videos. This is pretty high caliber production work that I put in tonight on this one. That's pretty highbrow for me. So you saw the 128 play. I did have upsets in there. I didn't go full chalk. Then down to 64, 32, and 16. We're at 16 now. All right, let's take our next call here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
To the man that gives college football its voice, the voice of the people, Mark Rogers. Hi, and how are you, sir?
I'm good. Hi, Dave.
Hello, sir. I wanted to by the way, I am optimistic that Jim Knowles will improve the Ohio State defense this year. You guys were just talking about that. I don't think it's going to take a major leap up because I think our offense is going to be that good this year. But I think that the biggest thing is I'm optimistic not only with his coaching, but I think we were a little bit younger last year. And I think some of these younger defensive linemen, because as I said to you, back to our conversation we had last time, nothing moves the needle for me outside quarterback, maybe wide receiver talent, more than defensive line talent. So I think some of our younger defensive linemen are going to step up this year. I think you're going to see some things out of the JTTs, maybe even the Sawyers, people like that, because every good Ohio State defense has always had that standout guy on the defensive line, a difference maker on the defensive line. So I am very optimistic, or trying to be very optimistic, I should say.
I think it makes sense when you put together Jim Knowles taking over the defense. I hear good things, and obviously his track record speaks for itself. Tanner McAllister coming over, not just as a all Big 12 safety, but a guy that, hey, he comes right over while they're trying to teach a defense to a bunch of new players. You got a veteran player who's played 41 starts in that defense to try to help his teammates out. I think that's huge. And then again, I don't want to put too much on them to try to excel in year one, but considering that Sonny Styles may be more linebacker than safety as a top 10 player in the country coming in. And then, of course, CJ Hicks as well. If one of them could hit as a big-time breakout player, or maybe both of them be decent, impactful, and show a burst, and really do something for that linebacking core that has been void of playmakers void of a great player for a long time, void of a high caliber all conference player since Raekwon McMillan. Man, it would be nice to see one of those guys hit.
I totally agree with you. I actually, this is finally, you're seeing this year, the linebacker recruiting caught up with their defensive line recruiting, as far as bringing in high end and talent at that particular position. So, yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you on that. I would say, even in 19 when the defense was great, they didn't necessarily have great linebacker play. I mean, Malik Harrison was a solid player, but outside of him, it was not an overly great group. I mean, that defense was more built on the defensive line and Chase Young's ability, and then a really top-notch secondary that year. So, I mean, the one good defense we've had in the last 4 years, it was built more or less around those strengths.
Now,
so,
I would say that the Ohio State fan is hoping that the linebacking recruiting has improved as much as that would indicate, as opposed to maybe it just being fortunate that two of the top 10 defensive players in the country, two of the top, according to 247 Sports, two of the top 10 players in the country on defense both played their high school football in Ohio. And therefore, that had to be a huge advantage, of course, for the Buckeyes.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's. I mean, and still there's cycles where we can get a few guys like that. Sawyer was a top 10 guy too on the defensive line when we recruited him as well. So, yeah, sometimes you have those years where you find a few of those guys in the state, and for your Ohio State, you can still, of course, be able to keep them at home. I did want to mention something, Mark. I found the SI cover interesting earlier. You said that was you mentioned the Schleister cover. By the way, as a former subscriber to Sports Illustrated myself, I was a big SI reader back in the day. But that Schleister cover was after they had beaten Michigan to finish the undefeated season in '79, right?
Yes.
Okay. That was the game where Todd Bell blocked the punt, that won the game, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, that was the almost dream season. Hey, I always wanted to ask you this question, Mark. I don't know if you've ever been asked this before about that team. What do you think the Bruce era would have looked like had Ohio State went with their first inclination as coach, which was Lou Holtz, over Earl Bruce? I know you've been asked that question probably a million times before in your life. I've just never heard your answer.
Oh, wait a minute. I thought you were going another direction. If Lou Holtz had been hired at Ohio State?
Instead of Earl. Remember, he was supposed to be the first choice.
Sure, yeah. The Earl Bruce, and we're talking about me being 9 years old consuming this stuff, so I wasn't exactly thinking of it in certain terms about hiring of coaches and is that a good hire or a bad hire. I was more into just watching the games and processing that. But from everything I remember, Earl Bruce was not a sexy hire at all, and wasn't greeted in terms of a lot of fanfare and excitement at Ohio State among Ohio State fans to replace Woody Hayes. Yeah, that was not a splash hire. He had
Right.
a short stint at Iowa State before that. So yeah, and Lou Holtz had already won big at Arkansas. He pulled off a big upset over Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl just prior to that. I think that was the 78 season, and had a nice
Right.
run before that at NC State.
Was an assistant on Ohio State on the 68
Yeah.
national championship team.
Yep.
Obviously an Ohio guy,
Yeah.
It just would have been interesting.
I was
Go
just
ahead,
going
I'm
to say,
sorry.
I don't know the background, and I've never read up on what the particulars are about why they went that direction.
I think that because I had heard something about the rumors that they wanted to interview Lou Holtz, and he just thought that they would offer him the job even without the interview. and on top of that, I think he felt he had a pretty decent job because Arkansas in '79, I believe, lost to Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. That's when Bear won his last national championship in '79, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah, because Ohio State would have split with them that year, I think, had Ohio State beaten USC. That probably would be one of those dreaded split years, don't you think, Mark?
If Ohio State would have, it could have been. It could have been. Alabama was pretty dominant. I think 24-9 was the final score against Arkansas in the Sugar Bowl. But that Arkansas team, I think they were 9-2, then 9-3 after the loss. They were a good team, of course, gaining a Sugar Bowl berth, but they weren't one of the top teams in the country. They were fringe top 10 versus Ohio State playing an NFL team. So I would have hoped that Ohio State would have held on to a number one ranking. But yeah, it may have been a Bear Bryant lean to get a split there and both teams undefeated. And that's, in my view, if I'm going to be consistent, is the fair way to do it back in those days. Was got two major powers, both undefeated, you split the championship.
Right. Although you make a good point about it, the impressive win. I mean, Ohio State to beat an undefeated number 3 USC team in the Rose Bowl would have been, that's a pretty good feather in your cap.
Oh, yeah, and the SEC was not a great conference then.
That's true. It wasn't the dominant conference in the late 70s, even into the early 80s there, because what Georgia took over the next 3 years, right, 80 through 82, the Herschel Walker team.
Yep, and
But
Auburn
you're right,
got better.
Yep. Right, Auburn started to grow with Pat Dye's teams there over the course of the 80s, right? Hey, Mark, I wanted to bring up something. Your caller, actually, your Georgia caller earlier brought up something about the championship games. That was an interesting thought. Isn't it interesting? You take a look back on some of these championship games, and there's some years where they've done more harm than good, right? When you think of how it's cost some teams, like you think '96, the first ever Big 12 championship game with Nebraska losing. 98, Kansas State losing in that Big 12 championship game that cost them a chance to play. Just think Kansas State would have been playing for the national championship in 1998, Mark. How crazy would that have been? But they could have been. And then, you mentioned that the last good Tennessee team that contended, they cost themselves a chance to play for the national championship by losing in 01, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes. But of course, that was only a two-team situation.
Right. Yeah. Well, that was an interesting situation too, because I really think the team that actually should have been playing was probably Oregon. Was probably the team that got the slight that year, if I'm not mistaken. That Joey Harrington Oregon team for not getting a chance to play for it.
Yeah, it was really a situation where there was no clear-cut number 2. It was difficult to figure out who should have been there, but it was another one of those BCS situations where you've got a handful of teams, in this case, really 3 teams, and they seem where you could see an argument for all 3, but certainly for 2 of the 3. And the BCS formula seemed to again side with the team that had the least argument, the team that had the least track record or resume. That's who was selected with the oddest or most egregious loss of any of the 3.
That's true. I mean, I guess that just leads me to my kind of just my general point, though. What do you think, Mark? I mean, have you always been a fan of the championship games? And just do you think, on balance, are they more good than bad, or just your overall thoughts?
Well, I like to see a culmination of the season in which we have the best teams playing for a championship. So while I miss a place in time in college football when New Year's Day was just everything and the bowl games were everything, and I don't agree with voting for a national championship, of course. So there has to be a championship in any sport, in my mind, to legitimize the championship. But somebody brought up this guy Matt Zemek that we have on, that writes for USC. He's got an interesting thought that I was going to try to put into practice and go through all the years to see how it would have worked out. He suggests to maintain the value of the bowl games, especially the major bowl games, we should go back to 1985 and play it out that way, except the only difference is after the bowl games are over, then select the 2 best teams to go play a national championship game. So those bowl games would serve as your audition, your entry into a national championship game.
Right. I kind of said the same thing, except for I would do still the 4 and semifinal final. After the bowl games. I had said that you could use the 4 major bowl games maybe as the decider game, which is basically like an 18 playoff.
Yeah, and then suddenly you enhance the bowl games and you give them value and worth again. There certainly can be situations in which a 9-3 team makes, or I guess they would be a 10-3 conference champion would make a bowl game, or a 9-3 team may squeeze into a major bowl game, and they really would be on the outside and not have a shot at trying to get into that top 4. But that would be pretty rare.
Right. I mean, if you take a look on balance of the records of teams that play in the major bowl games, let's say over the last, 35, 40 years, however long you want to use as far as the sample size, I guarantee you're seeing a lot more 2 loss, 1 loss, maybe even, probably, in the playoff era, it's kind of different. But if you look maybe pre the playoff era, because the playoff era is basically excluding the bowl games. It's a different thing set aside from the bowl games. But I think if you went, pre the bowl games back to the BCS era and back further, I think if you took a sample size from that period back, you'd see more than a few, 1 loss, 2 loss, maybe even undefeated teams playing in the major bowl games as a majority, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think, Mark?
Absolutely. So last year, we've got an Ohio State Utah Rose Bowl game, Pac-12, Big 12. We've got an SEC, or we've got a Sugar Bowl that actually would have been Alabama and I guess Baylor. I guess Baylor and Alabama are going to play in the Sugar Bowl as the SEC and the Big 12 champions. And then we've got an Orange Bowl with, I guess, the ACC champion. Pitt plays whomever we're going to, and then we've got a Fiesta Bowl game with the Big 12, or we already did the Big 12. How is that going to shake out? Who else do we have left here? Got the ACC, the Pac-12, the Big 12, the SEC. Anyway, it'd have to be reorganized for today's conference alignment. And then, Yeah, it would have been fascinating. Georgia would have had a spot somewhere as a at large, and probably Notre Dame and Oklahoma State. Actually, no. The Rose Bowl would have been Michigan and Utah.
Right,
So
yeah, because they won the conference.
yeah, so Ohio State would have been, I guess, scuffling for a spot. Yeah,
Yeah, they'd probably be looking at like maybe an at-large bid or something like that. Because sometimes the second place team in a conference could still play in a major bowl game.
well, sure.
But
Yeah,
you'd right.
there would be at large spots to be filled. I don't know if they would have gotten one. But,
Yeah, that would have been close because I'd have to see. You'd have to. They may have slipped below 8 or below that area. I think after that loss, if I'm not mistaken. Then I remember where the rankings had them after that loss. Maybe I didn't even want to know.
yeah.
But one thing I also wanted to mention, Mark, this has always been put out there as a major improvement or something that college football should do. In fact, I think, I mentioned how I talked about 04 Auburn before. And by the way, it's always crazy to me how an undefeated SEC team didn't play for a national championship, but that's 04 Auburn, right? One of the things that I think that hurt them that year, why they didn't play for it, is because of the starting point for USC and Oklahoma going into the season.
Oh, yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The starting point of the polls that year, they were preseason 1 and 2, if I'm not mistaken, right,
Yes.
Mark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that leads.
I'm sorry, Dave. I was
just
just going to say that. Yeah, that's been my beef about that year. It was 1, 2, and 19. So basically, they just kept them in order, and Auburn, of course, raised their ranking every week, and then they hit a ceiling at number 3, and they just sat there.
Right. And they basically said, well, Oklahoma and USC didn't do anything wrong because they both went undefeated that year. So, and that's obviously why they ended up playing, because where they started at. But that leads to a question that I think a lot of people have put out there for a while, which is one of the better ways to improve college football is why release preseason rankings? Why not put the rankings in the middle of the year? I guess we all know who the better teams are going to be at maybe the start of the year. In some ways, we really don't need the preseason rankings, but and I'm sure you probably talked about this before. Maybe I haven't had a chance to hear you talk about it, but just put the rankings later on in the season, maybe midway into the season, or maybe the quarter point. Just what are your thoughts on that, and maybe how that might be structured?
Well, I think your point is valid if we were in 2004 again, because I think that's what impacted that season. And that's not to say that if we started with no rankings, that Oklahoma and USC didn't earn or would not have been given favor over Auburn. It would have been a difficult decision. You've got 3 conference champions from 3 major conferences that went undefeated. It's an impossible scenario. It's impossible to be fair, because somebody's going to get left out under those conditions. But I don't see where we really suffer from that now, because we've got a playoff committee that hopefully doesn't look at the rankings. And even if they do, they're not selecting until we're 8 weeks deep into the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's always the point. I think I still think it kind of, in some ways, kind of poisons the water a little bit here, Mark. People say that I think it's got some kind of an influence. I don't know how big of an influence it has, but I still think it does to some extent. And that's why I think if they put off the rankings until somewhere later in the year, I just think it would be better off for the playoff, better off for the whole scenario.
I believe that in certain cases, I think it still has an impact. I think Cincinnati was ranked where they are this past season because they were expected to be good. If this was circa 2015 and Cincinnati against that schedule just all of a sudden went undefeated, and sure, they beat Notre Dame on the road. Let's give them credit there. 2-score win against a top 10 team in the country. But besides that, scuffling against Navy and Tulane and Tulsa And if this was the Cincinnati that would have been unranked at the start of the season and just came out of nowhere, I don't think that they would have climbed to the heights that they did.
Yeah, I mean, although like we've talked about with Cincinnati before, though, that they caught some breaks this year. That basically you had three of the five major conferences were just kind of down this year. When you look at the Big 12, the ACC, and then the Pac-12, so they were kind of like in by default, so to speak.
Sure.
So they kind of had that assistance from that standpoint too. Plus, I think that everybody was going to give them, a certain amount of data points for going in and beating Notre Dame at Notre Dame.
Yes. And Notre Dame helped them out by otherwise going undefeated. If Notre Dame would have been 8-4, then maybe would have had a different outcome. I'm sure we would have.
Right, because I think that basically, by the way, what week did they play Notre Dame, Mark? Was that early in the season or was that late?
That was
midway.
They had already beaten Indiana. That was like game 4.
Okay. So I guess to my point, though, is if you bring out the rankings, let's say, midway through the season, by that time they would have been undefeated with a major victory at Notre Dame. With that, at that point, being Notre Dame's only loss. So I mean, I think there's still a good chance that even if they weren't ranked to start the season, just being undefeated with that data point victory, I still think they would have done pretty good in the rankings if the rankings just started out by week number 8, let's say.
But again, let's not confuse the AP and coaches rankings with what the College Football Playoff Selection Committee is doing.
Correct. Yeah, that's true. But I hear you. Okay, I get your point. Yeah, I don't know. Do you think have they said the playoff committee has not said they take in like AP or the coaches poll or that stuff into consideration?
No, they are not supposed to be.
Okay.
Why would they take the opinion of a bunch of coaches? Well, if it even is the coaches, and I don't believe it is, or a bunch of sports writers. They're supposed to be an independent committee that is taking the metrics of the games, all the statistics, every statistic they could ever want to dream up is at their fingertips to say, hey, I want to know who's the top 10 in the country in yards per play or, hurries or whatever they want. They've got everything handed to them, plus watching the games and determining who's best.
Right.
That why would they? And I'm not saying that they don't. This is still a human committee of 13 people, but I don't know why. I certainly wouldn't. Shoot, all I do is talk on YouTube, and I don't look at the AP rankings to make my rankings. That's the last thing I would look at. Why would these people that have the power of selecting the playoff teams be looking at 60 sports writers and what they have to say?
Right. Well, I mean, you'd think it would be, the basics would be, obviously, who are you beating? I mean, how many quality victories do you have? I mean, you could also probably, I think margin of victory and, how decisive you're winning is probably got to be in the top 3 or 4 criteria there as well. And, those have to be, right up there as far as the biggest factors, or at least they've given an indication that those are the bigger factors involved.
Well, Dave, to me, you hit on the only 2 factors. Now you can slice it up a dozen different ways and have different ways of determining what you find important in coming to these 2 conclusions. But the 2 conclusions are, how tough is your schedule? Who did you beat? And if you did lose, who did you lose to? And then point number 2 is, how well did you play? Did you beat a bunch of teams 50-0, or did you skate by 28-27 every week? Versus that first determinant we just talked about, the schedule. How dominant were you against the schedule? And depending on the person, what they value in terms of trying to determine what makes sense. What statistics are of value in determining, is it just point differential, or do they go into yards per play and all those various traditional stats or advanced metrics to determine how dominant is this team against that schedule? That's all it comes down to.
Yeah, you know what? From what I remember, they still had Oklahoma ranked fairly high. On their early rankings, their playoff rankings. And remember, they were skating by barely beaten bad football teams last year.
Yes, and I believe Oklahoma was still undefeated because they, of course, lost the last game of the season to Oklahoma State that knocked them out of the conference championship game. And it was only a few weeks before that they lost to Baylor. So I think Oklahoma got off to something like an 8-0 start. So if you're winning the games...
Right, but remember, yeah. No, go ahead. I'm sorry, Mike.
Well, if you're winning the games, you're winning the games, and that's all that matters. So I think in a perfect world, if we had the best system possible, that if you're winning games, really that's all that matters. In any other sport, that's all we're talking about is winning the game. Sure,
right.
There's going to be evaluation by media and by fans that some NFL team that's 9-2 really isn't that good because of X, Y, and Z. But hey, if they continue to win, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks about them.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, although as an Ohio State fan, we had obviously one of the great style point wins of all time that helped us get into the playoffs. So.
And also some of the greatest style point losses to keep them out of the playoff.
Yeah, that too. Well, as always, it's a pleasure to talk college football with you, Mark. You have yourself a good evening now.
Dave, thank you so much for the call. I will leave you on one note here to wrap up the Auburn versus Oklahoma discussion for 2004. Get this. Auburn beat at time of kickoff the numbers 3, 8, 10, and 15 teams in the country. 3, 8, 10, and 15. Oklahoma 5, 20, and 22. So Auburn beat 4 higher ranked teams than Oklahoma did.
Yeah, and they might have been able to put a slightly better showing. Although that was a really good USC team. I do wonder if they would have given them that much better of a game that year.
Yeah, well, I have little doubt that it would have been closer than 55-19.
Yeah, that one didn't work too well for the Boomer Sooner that year.
All right, Dave. Thanks so much
Mark,
for the call.
You have a good one. Take care.
You too.
Now.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right. Keeping it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate everybody being here. The number is at the bottom of the screen there at 860-499-3332. And Dave, I left his comment, not our caller Dave, but Dave Smothers. No, that's Dave Snothier. I probably butchered that, but anyway, Dave's comment we put on the screen here. I cannot wait until the SEC has its downtime. Dave, let me break this to you. I think the SEC's downtime might be something like they only got one team in the playoff and they lost a playoff game. And they only had 3 teams finish in the top 10 in the country. It ain't happening. It's just the whole landscape of college football would have to implode. I don't know what would have to come off the rails. There would have to be some kind of great conspiracy because there are so many factors that weigh heavily in the SEC's favor, and that's why we see the dominance from year to year. They have the most players playing high school football in their footprint. They care. They're committed. They've got money and resources. They got all that going for them. And now they got Texas and Oklahoma. That helps even more for the health of the conference. It just makes more money for the conference. It elevates the conference way above the other conferences from a total quality standpoint, and power and resources and money. It's all in the SEC's direction. People have moved in the SEC footprint for the last 40 years. They've moved out west, but nobody cares about football out there enough to do anything about it. You Pac-12 fans that watch me on a regular basis, I love you being here. I'm not talking about you caring about football. The people in power don't care about football in the great West Coast area there. But in the SEC, yes, they care. So what'd you guys think of the 128-team tournament? There were a few people that commented, and I get it. We don't want this. That would be ridiculous. I understand that. I'm not proposing that. I'm just saying, hey, there's a big NCAA tournament going on in that other sport. So let's just see what it would look like. Let's put the seedings together. And once we got past the first round, especially, I thought, man, there's be a lot of really good games here. Be a lot of good games. And if I was capable of putting up the games and still being able to talk to all of you and you hearing me over that, and I could probably figure that out through well, I know that it's possible. It's most likely possible through the soundboard. Me figuring it out, that's a whole other question. So unfortunately, I can't show. Please link the ND channel. Let's do that. Absolutely. I want to see if we've picked up any subs since we've been on. And I do appreciate everybody being here. That's not right. We don't want to do that. We've picked up about 15 subs here while we've been on. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Picking up 15 subs on the main channel. That's great. I see that. Our subscriber rate increase in the last month to 2 months has been just dragging. This is the slow time of year in college football. I can't get discouraged. People aren't watching videos. People don't care about college football right now unless you are hardcore. And so we're waiting for spring practice, which, by the way, I will be live every Saturday during April, especially for sure the 9th, 16th, 23rd, and 30th. Because there's a load of spring games, and we're going to be live every Saturday during April to recap the spring games and talk spring football. And again, recap all those spring games, which again are mostly loaded up on the 9th, 16th, and 23rd, those 3 Saturdays. All right, let's check out this Notre Dame channel here. 995. We are 5 away, and our guy here is looking for a link. We appreciate you asking about that Stardust. So I'm posting the link. There we go. Have at it. Oh, Joey, I believe, had already posted it. Thank you so much for that, Joey. Joey is on it. Thanks, Joey. Gary's telling us that the 2022 quarterback recruit at Michigan State is not bland, and Tiger is steadily upgrading their roster. I know that from tracking recruiting. Not a Spartans fan. Gary, we always appreciate you being here. You've always got some insightful comments for us. I see them all the time. John says that Sark's a kick in the pants to have a few beers with. Well, the way he's going, he's going to be able to dive back into the brewskis and be able to kick them back with all sorts of fans and folks here. A couple more 5 and 7s, and it's back to back hitting it up there. I think that's got to be the end of the line. If you can't win at Washington, can't win at USC, can't win at Texas, man, how many chances is this guy going to get? And John is telling us that Gary Patterson. Yes, what an addition there. That's a great one for Texas football. They pick up Gary Patterson to fix the defense. All right, next caller here on the line at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you calling. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Dan. How's it going?
Dan, I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. First time caller. Enjoy your show. I just had a question for you. I guess I could hang up and listen. What's the deal with Hellwagon? I think you know what I mean.
Well, Steve's been coming on here for a long, long time, and he's great. Love Steve. Why would I comment on Steve in any particular way? Except to say that, hey, he drives that Ohio State show we do each week. Steve's awesome. I don't know what you're looking forward for besides that. Oh, we lost our caller. Yeah, don't know what that was all about. What's up with Steve? Yeah, Steve is, man, those guys on Wednesday, I could say this about all our shows, but I'm just going to, in particular, specify the Ohio State show right now. Got a great Miami show, Florida State, West Virginia, Oklahoma, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But since our last caller, Dan, brought up Steve Hellwagon, between Steve, Tony Gerdeman, Kevin Noon, they are here every Wednesday to talk Ohio State football. These guys have jobs. They got other things to do. They've got a ton of stuff doing to cover Ohio State football, basketball. They've got a ton of stuff. And except for a few little super chats that come in once in a while, and by the time we divide it all, you can imagine what they're making. They're making pennies. It's not even pennies, fractions of pennies. I'm astounded. I got to say that we've done this show for 150 consecutive weeks, Ohio State Live every Wednesday, and they continue to show up. I'm astounded. Hopefully we get to a point here at the Voice of College Football with building up the channel. Hopefully I envision a time in which we can bring in tremendous contributors like that, and we can compensate them, because otherwise we're going to lose them. But we've got an Ohio State show every Wednesday at 1:30 on the Ohio State channel. So please check it out. We've got 9 live streams on a regular basis every Wednesday. So keep that in mind. A lot of people just catch us here on the main channel and don't understand. Hey, so for example, we've got a West Virginia channel. Got our West Virginia show every Friday at 8 Eastern. West Virginia football fans, get here every Friday at 8 Eastern. So it starts out on Tuesday night. We've got Iowa Live at 5:30 Eastern on the Iowa channel. Nebraska Live at 7 Eastern on the Nebraska channel. Then Wednesday, we got a big day with Oklahoma at 12:30 in the afternoon Eastern time on the Sooner channel. Ohio State at 1:30. Michigan at 5. Florida State at 6. Miami at 7. That's on Wednesday, all on their respective channels. And then on Thursday, Miami at 8. West Virginia, Friday at 8. Okay. So it is 12:28, and I am about 35 minutes back in the chat. Let me fast forward this one and see what you guys are talking about here, because we got nobody on the line right now. Roger Dodger, Mark, does the USC guy even like USC? Seems like a closet Oregon fan. I don't know. And I think it's probably better that way. It's like people that watch me and have no idea who I root for. Ferris, Michigan fan, likes the Ohio State channel better than the Michigan channel. Okay. All right, Roger Dodger, I make that comment about donating or whatever I said about donations coming in. So understand this, that I want us to get this channel and our series of channels. We got a network of channels, like 25 channels, to the point where we don't need anybody to donate anything. Although if you look at all these huge YouTube channels, oh my goodness, there's a few YouTube channels that I'm not necessarily that familiar with, but I've seen them enough. I couldn't name the names, but like news-oriented channels that get a ton of traffic, like they've got 25,000 people watching it, and the chat is scrolling by at a blistering pace, and then the super chats are lighting up the scoreboard like it's a arcade, as you can imagine. Well, of course, that all should be icing on the cake. That's tremendous. I will always appreciate the donations. Yes, absolutely. But we need to come to a place where that's not a necessity. Right now, it's a necessity for me to pay the electric bill, the water, and to eat. But we don't need to be in that place. We need to have sponsorships, affiliate marketing, all these other things in place to make this work. All right, enough on the business side. Let's get back to college football. Blank name. Thank you so much for the comment and the support of Dre and Desmond. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. It is going to be April in like 3 days, and I understand it's going to be like 15 degrees tonight. It's windy. It's blustery out there. I was just out there before I started up. I was on just around the corner, well, down the street around the corner. My son bought a house close to me, which is phenomenal, of course. Hung out with him for a couple hours. He's like, Dad, it's going to be like 15 degrees tonight. I'm like, are you kidding me? I don't watch the weather. Don't keep track of the weather. All right, we got a call coming in. Thankfully, right here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Michael. How you doing tonight, sir?
Michael, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Not bad. Still getting over the shock of what happened Friday night with Purdue.
Before I comment on that, Michael, can you do me a favor and turn the volume down in the background? I'm listening to myself, and I will tell everyone that just editing videos, the videos that I need to edit where I have to hear myself talk all the time, it's nauseating. I get tired of hearing my own voice. It's just not pretty on the ears. So thank you for that, Michael. Yes, I heard that you lost a tough game there to that was St. Peter's, right? St. Peter's, yes.
Yeah. Because I'm just trying to figure out what you're saying because I'm using my earbuds right now. And I had the volume down.
Okay. Yes, thank you for that.
But anyway, no problem. Hope you're having a great weekend. Trying to stay warm like the rest of us in the Midwest. But anyway, I got a question. You keep saying you have all the channels and stuff like that. But I was talking with the friends who watch you, and I'm not sure if they subscribe to you. If not, I don't know what's wrong with them. Maybe they need to see a psychiatrist or something. But they brought up the point, how about specific conference channels? So you can talk about, I know you got Michigan, you got Ohio State, you got Iowa, you got Wisconsin, but maybe having conference channels to where you can talk about all the teams in each conference and stuff like that.
We have an SEC channel and a Big Ten channel.
Okay. Who runs it? I've seen the SEC, but I've never seen the Big Ten channel.
Well, I will leave it in the chat.
Okay. Now, do you ever do like live stuff with them, or is it just usually with the team specific channels?
No, I don't. I don't. The Big Ten channel's not doing well at all. I don't know what the situation is with the Big Ten channel. We've got a lot of subscribers there, but any videos that get posted there, nobody's watching.
Wonder why that is. I'm surprised.
Well,
but
it's not necessarily an indictment on Big Ten football fans. YouTube is a tricky business. Like, for example, I've noticed that, here on the main channel, during football season and even before the last football season, we were on a roll. And I got to be careful what I post on this main channel, because if I post things like, I really shouldn't have started this little NCAA tournament thing because nobody's watching those videos. And you know what happens when you post videos and nobody watches them, even if you've got, and I'm not bragging about 33,000 subscribers. That's a small channel compared to a lot of other channels, but you would think that I would get a lot of views on just about anything I put out there with 33,000 subs. But if I put videos out there and only like 500 people watch them, then YouTube puts the hammer down. They like suppress your traffic, and they just figure this guy's turning out videos, nobody likes them, so we're not gonna put them out there. And it really puts me in a position where I got to dig out of that. And I really want to clean up this main channel and really not put anything on here that's not going to do well. And I really need to figure that out, because there's a whole approach and strategy to YouTube that I certainly have obviously not mastered.
Just wondering stuff like that. Now, as people who follow you religiously and stuff like that, what can we do to help you alleviate some of the stress, take some of that pressure off of you, so we can keep this stuff going?
Well, I think the simplest thing to do, outside of that would certainly not cost anyone anything, is like the videos, which again, I really don't understand how YouTube works, all that, but that's all I keep hearing from anybody that knows anything about YouTube, is you want people to like the videos, and then share the videos out on social media. Like, so for example, I went out here in the last couple months and I have joined a bunch of Facebook groups. Like, I joined 5 or 6 Nebraska Facebook groups and 4 or 5 West Virginia Facebook groups and a bunch of Miami Voice Facebook groups. And I go in there and I post the videos, or post a channel link a lot, and try to encourage people to come in. And these Facebook groups have 5, 10, 20,000 members. So I would think that would kind of jumpstart those channels and those videos, but it really hasn't worked. But I think the bottom line, Michael, is that I try to remind people this all the time, that all of you know people, whether you know them personally or through social media, that have no idea that I exist. And so if you can just spread the word, send links out there, or just talk to people and let them know that if they love college football, here we are.
Yeah. But another thing I'm trying to figure out, I get that but what I was referring to is this, like how you're doing the live stream. How can we go about, maybe so you don't have to constantly crank out all the streams yourself, so you can take some time off? Let us do some of the streams for you and stuff like that.
Oh, that I would have other people host the streams?
Yes.
Well, how do I answer that? I have no issue with that. If you notice, during the season, we did post-game shows on at least 10 other channels, where I had Notre Dame post-game hosts, Michigan, Nebraska, Ohio State, etc. And those guys would do post-game shows after the games for those particular teams. But you know what I noticed is, even the ones that I put on the main channel with all these subscribers, I don't want to say this the wrong way to make it sound wrong, but it seems like you guys didn't necessarily watch post game with other people, because I would be on at the same time, and it seemed like everybody just came and watched the post game shows on Saturday with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one thing I was trying to figure out. I wish there was a way we can do more stuff like that, so it alleviates the time with you and stuff like that. So, but maybe not everybody can do that though. But anyway, I'm trying to think if I'm remembering stuff like that. You have Iowa in your tournament 64 this year.
Oh yeah, they were at 21.
All right. How was it? Was it because they was better or had better quality wins than Purdue did?
Why?
Or put like, I guess I'm wondering because I saw like Purdue played and stuff like that. They were more proficient on both sides of the ball this year than Iowa was.
Absolutely, they were
not effective. But how did you come up with the 64 anyway? I can understand like the top 10 and stuff like that. But was there?
After the season was over, I ranked all 130 teams from last year. I just took my own rankings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Purdue was what, 18?
And if I'm not mistaken, I think Purdue was like 35th or 36th.
No. No, I'm sorry. I don't want to confuse you, Michael. You may be thinking about program ranking. So I ranked the programs. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where Purdue was, but that sounds about right. 35th, 36th. But I ranked the teams for 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Purdue finished number 18 in my final rankings. Why they didn't finish in the top 25 of the AP or the coaches poll, I have no idea. But they finished number 18 in my rankings. And that's where I put them in this tournament. I just took my rankings and I made that for the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the rankings came from.
One last thing, because I'm not sure if you have other callers or not and stuff like that. But have you got? Because I still haven't heard back from your webmaster yet. Because I was thinking about going to Purdue's practice tomorrow and checking them out, and just writing a piece about that and stuff.
All right. Well, we need to get that put together. So let me chase him down again. I apologize for that. I don't know what's going on there. So let me let him know that he needs to get in touch with you, because he contacted me back just to let me know that we were ready to go. So we will do that. And by the way, Michael, nobody is waiting on the line, so you can talk to me about Purdue football as long as you'd like.
Okay. I haven't got a chance and stuff like that. Yeah. So have you got a chance to, or are you waiting to all the spring practices over to start focusing on the schedules?
Okay. Well, this is what I had in mind. So, in the morning, we're going to release our all-time program rankings for the SEC. And then I'm going to release a final video with all the all-time rankings. Okay. Then we'll be done with that series. Mm-hmm. Then the next series I'm moving on to, I have gone through every conference and ranked the coaches. So that's going to be the next series, ranking all the coaches in every conference. And then by that time, we're going to be at the end of spring practice, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to rank every position in every conference.
No, the one you just did a couple weeks ago for the Big Ten, pretty spot on with that one, Mark.
I'm sorry, what was that, Michael?
The one you just did for the Big Ten?
Yes.
It's pretty spot on. I thought Purdue might have been a little better, though, and stuff like that, though. So have you, with Nebraska, in the time they've been in the Big Ten, where would they have been ranked if you just strictly went Big Ten only?
Oh, well, I would love to have the time to do all those sorts of things. Yeah, that would be a great video right there to kind of dissect. Okay, since Nebraska joined the Big Ten, oh my word, Nebraska would not be, since they joined the Big Ten, of course, they made a championship game early against Wisconsin and got mauled. And they had all those 9-4 seasons against under Bo Pelini. And then Mike Riley had a 9-4 year, and then he hit Skids, and then Scott Frost. They're probably 8th or 9th in the Big Ten.
Okay.
They'd be in that
Not
range.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was wondering, is there a chance you can look at Purdue's schedule right now for the 2022-23 season?
Sure.
And we can go by game by game and see what we think is going to happen?
Okay.
Or is that still too early for you?
You want to do that right this second?
It's up to you. I mean, you don't have to. I just didn't know if you wanted to do that just to pass time or.
Well, I do have another caller coming in right now, but
okay.
I will review all the schedules.
We don't have to do it tonight, Mark.
We'll do the schedules at some point.
Tonight.
Well, I'm going to be doing the schedule reviews as well coming up here in the next month or two. Thanks for the call, Michael. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.
Take care, Mark.
Bye-bye. All right. Next up here, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Oh, good evening, Mark. This is Jeff.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
Hi, doing good, Mark. I hope you had a good evening.
Absolutely.
Good. Such a pleasure to see you on tonight. You know, Mark, I heard a few callers back. A gentleman inquired about how the Buckeye program would have turned out a little different if we had hired Lou Holtz instead of Earl Bruce.
Yep.
And I remember that 79 season so clearly, Mark, because my parents had divorced and my dad was in the process of getting remarried. So we were down watching the games with him on tape delay every Saturday. And the Buckeyes were, once they got past UCLA, I think, early in the season, they were just kind of steamrolling along, you know. And then when they got to Ann Arbor with that classic Todd Bell block, Mark, I watched that game with my grandpa, and my grandpa, they had just moved from Tennessee. They moved from Tennessee like 30 years earlier up here, so he wasn't a big fan of Woody Hayes. He was a Michigan fan, and boy, I just danced across this living room, and boy, he was mad, Mark. And then when the Buckeyes lost in the Rose Bowl, he called me that morning. I was ready to catch the bus for school, and he said, what about them Buckeyes now? And I said, geez, man, we only lost by a point. And I'll never forget his words, Mark. He was like, hey, one is as good as 1,000. But skip forward a couple years now, and my grandpa is gone. But I'm in there. It's a Saturday. I'm in the car with my uncle. We're listening to the Buckeyes playing Stanford in the shoe on a Saturday.
Yep.
And John Elway just brings them back. You know, it's classic Elway. Brings them back and wins it. And man, my uncle was smoking now because he's a Buckeye fan. And he said, they would have hired Lou Holtz. He said, back in the day, Mark, the demographics were different. He was like, Ohio is just loaded with football talent, man, and we're losing these players to Michigan and other schools.
Yeah.
He had that philosophy of sealing the border. Anyways, Mark, do you know, Mark, when Earl Bruce did take that job, though? I know Pete Carroll was, I believe, our defensive backs coach, and that was a great squad. Todd Bell.
I remember.
Stillings.
Yep. Does the name Paul Campbell ring a bell since you brought up the UCLA game?
Yeah. Terry Donahue was a great coach, Mark. And I believe that UCLA squad had guys like Freeman McNeil and Kenny Easley.
Yes.
And Irv Eatman. So it was a loaded squad, too. But I don't think any team was better than USC that year.
Yeah.
I really think they were.
Well, that UCLA team didn't have much of a season. I think they went 5-6, if I remember correctly. But yeah, they had some individual talent for sure.
But so, Mark, I didn't catch your comments. I'm apologizing to you. My wife got this dog, and I ended up being the dog keeper. So I had to take this dog out when you were giving your comment to the gentleman about how you thought that would have changed the program. You do think Lou Holtz would have been an upgrade over Earl Bruce?
Yeah, and I have a lot of respect and admiration for Earl Bruce. And he did a fine job at Ohio State, but I got to think that Lou Holtz, there wasn't a program that he went that he didn't significantly upgrade it. It's just what he did. He was a remarkable coach. Notre Dame was so much better when he got there. South Carolina, they were 1-10 when he got there. He turned them into a bowl team immediately. On and on. Minnesota, do you remember the game against Ohio State at the Metrodome in 1985? Minnesota was horrible. Actually lost to Ohio State the year before, in 83, like 69-13. And Lou Holtz almost pulled off an upset. He had Rose Bowl patches put on the decals put on the shoulder pads of his players at Minnesota because they tried to pull off an upset of Ohio State, and they nearly did, like 23-19. Yeah, Lou Holtz I don't think you can really look at Earl Bruce and look at Lou Holtz and make a fair comparison.
And it seemed like Lou Holtz was always like one step ahead as far as evaluating where the game was going.
True.
I know even at Minnesota, he liked the quarterbacks that could run some. And I think when he got to Notre Dame, he wanted Tony Robinson. Was it Tony Robinson, Mark? Because he said in today's game, you need a quarterback that can do some running. And I believe it was
Tony Rice. Yes.
Yeah. So anyways, Mark, and did I hear you correctly, though, Mark? You were only 9 years old, though, when that Rose Bowl against USC took place?
That was New Year's Day, 1980, so I was 11.
Man, Mark, I thought we were close to the same age, but I was 15, so I'm a little older. And you're the football prodigy, Mark. No wonder they call you the voice of college football, man. Anyways, may I ask you, Mark, I don't mean to go off topic because, like I say, you are the voice of college football, but back in the 80s, did you have a favorite NBA team? Were you a Lakers or Celtic guy?
I was actually a 76ers fan.
You like Dr. J and Moses.
Yeah, Dr. J. So the first NBA games I remember in the very end of the 70s, 79, 80, that's when, of course, Bird and Magic were drafted, and people focus mostly on the Lakers and Celtics. But I was a Dr. J guy, and the most I ever got into the NBA was during that time. And the Sixers would, as you well know, run into the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, and had some epic series. And Dr. J.
Yeah, I was a Celtic guy, Mark, but Andrew Toney used to be like a guy that would put a dagger to us. He's the forgotten Sixer, I think. Sometimes injury kind of cut him short. So, anyways, Mark, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for all you do. And hey, Mark, may I ask you also, did you know John Clayton pretty good when you were at ESPN? Because I always admired his work.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, the news we heard, for anybody out there that did not, just here in the last week, that John Clayton passed away. And, I worked in a capacity for about the last 15 or 16 years at ESPN, where as a production operations manager. And because of the role that I had, actually the people that worked under me, that reported to me, in studio and in production rooms, they would meet more and interact more with the talent than I did, because they were actually working on the shows. But I don't recall ever meeting, or I saw him around a few times. But, John Clayton, for the most part, was I believe he based out of Seattle for much of that time. So he wasn't around campus much.
I think here I live in Toledo, Mark, in Ohio, and I think the first time our cable picked up ESPN was like 81, I want to say, because I remember Chris Berman, guys like Bob Lee, Tom Mees was on. the classic guys. And even for college basketball, they had a guy named, I don't know if they were related, but Lynn Berman. I don't know if he was related to Chris.
I don't believe so.
He did the Big East games, I believe. That's where I first saw Patrick Ewing, and like 40 years ago, Mark, Ewing against Michael Jordan. That was a great championship.
Oh, yeah. That was when Freddie Brown threw the ball away.
To James Worthy.
Yes.
To James Worthy, yep. And I think at the beginning of the game, Ewing had something like 8 or 10 goaltends, and a lot of them were against Worthy. But Worthy did have a great game, and I think he was the series MVP. And so, Mark, always a pleasure to talk to you. You're a pro, and I just hope you have a blessed night, and thank you for all you do.
We appreciate the call. Thank you so much for that. And again, thank you for the call, and welcome back anytime. Have a good night.
Thanks, Mark. Good night.
All right. Voice of College Football here on a Sunday night. Yes, Gary, downtown Freddie Brown. And if you've not seen the ending of that game, Georgetown, North Carolina, NCAA championship game, I believe the first on CBS. It was on NBC through 1981, Indiana, North Carolina, then the next year on CBS. And a Georgetown player flashed. So to Freddie Brown's defense, one of his teammates flashed and jumped out, and he saw that in his periphery. So then his teammate then went down low, and so he just tossed the ball out to the wing and right to James Worthy. Yes, one of the big gaffes in the history of the Final Four, along with some other ones. Chris Webber comes to mind. All right. Appreciate everybody being here. We are in the process of releasing all-time program rankings. The SEC will be released in the morning. And then we will finish up with Notre Dame and some of the top group of fives, BYU, Boise State, Houston, etc. We'll put it all together and wrap up the series all-time program rankings. Then I will produce a series where we rank all the coaches in college football in the Power Five. We'll go conference by conference and then probably finish out with a top 10. Yes, Porter. I remember that well, that President Reagan was shot the same day Indiana and North Carolina played in Philadelphia. And then we'll work on our position rankings. And again, all through the month of April, we will be here on Saturdays to do spring game live streams. All right. Anything else? Amazon link, use it, please. Help us grow the channel. Use the Amazon link in the description section. It's the same shopping experience, doesn't cost you a penny, and it helps us. And somebody's calling in, so we'll take it. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Marcus, George. How you doing
George,
today?
what's going on?
I had the best idea ever today.
The best idea ever? Well, considering the ideas you have, this must be a showstopper.
Exactly. It's a sure bet. I just had you. I feel like I'm so technology advanced. I just brought your show up on my tablet so I can talk to you on the phone and see the chat at the same time.
As opposed to what were you doing before?
I used to be able to do it all just on my phone.
Oh, okay.
But the phones keep getting better and better. Now I need 3 objects to do what one used to do. Anyway, you need to call every pizza joint in West Virginia and every sports bar in West Virginia, and then repeat that 32 times. Start naming other cities, other towns, because it has to start at the grassroots. People need to know they have a channel, and nobody knows. There's not enough people.
Okay, that's a thought.
So And listen, you can advertise any pizza joint that puts up your placard and puts your shit on their table, like a menu they can read before they get their dinner that talks about the West Virginia Sports Channel. You will give them free advertising.
Free? Who am I giving
Just
free
advertising?
Whoa.
Sports bar.
Free?
Well, no, it won't be free because they'll be advertising for you also.
Okay.
We're going to have to start grassroots. We're going to have to start and build from the ground up.
That's a heck of an idea right there. I kind of like that, other than a million phone calls I'm going to have to make.
American work. It's the old-fashioned American work ethic. It's like, I'll do this for you if you do that for me. Yeah.
I guess I Google Morgantown, West Virginia, pizza, and I just start calling places.
Exactly. And sports bars.
Sports bars, that's good.
And this is where I come in. I will be willing to donate some of my time, but you're going to have to give me the referral to explain to them why they need to paste your name all over their restaurant and how once we get everybody online together in one place, you will be able to show this to the recruiting class and say, look, they're talking about us. Yeah.
And how about this, George? Let's say we call the sports bar. Let's say we got a sports bar in West Virginia. And I'm sure these sports bars, they've got, unless there's a big game on ABC or CBS or whatever, all their TVs are on ESPN all the time. Well, we let them know every Friday night at 8:00 Eastern time, 8:00 Friday night, we got a West Virginia live show. So you should put that on your TVs. Because it's all West Virginia football talk.
Wouldn't that be something? And every table has an interactive pad where they can all jump in the chat.
Man, I like that.
Live with Mark Rogers and George and MVP 24 and Roger Dodger and Ferris and Michael Hogg and Joey Foster and Cheryl.
Yep. Absolutely. And, George, just because I know that your heart would be in it and you would sell it even better, I think I'll start out by giving you all the Florida, the Gainesville area calls.
I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm just trying to survive day to day. I'm not really sure I'm the best candidate. I'm afraid to go out of my house, man. If I can do it over the internet, I might be able to pull it off.
Well, yeah, you don't have to go anywhere.
I was always afraid to live in East Lansing or Detroit or Gary, Indiana, or the south side of Chicago. But I promise you now, Portland is exactly the same. Everybody's afraid to go outside, man. Yeah. Every day when you turn on the news, it's like 72 killings and 19 carjackings, and we're all going like, what the fuck?
I know I saw on the news just the other day that Amazon pulled out of Seattle, and I saw some shots from where the Amazon was. Man, it just, you just had homeless people just laying all over the streets and all over the sidewalks, and you had needles just
I've been doing this for
everywhere.
Like 4 years, Mark. I've been doing this for like 4 years, Mark.
Yep.
But what's really funny about the whole thing is that it's not just where I live in Portland, and it's the same as Seattle, but it's not just downtown. It spreads out for like 20 miles in every direction. Now, there are some gated millionaire communities that are still like heaven. They don't even know this is happening because I work there sometimes, painting or whatever. But when I'm there, I'm like, this is heaven. I love this place. And then when I drive out of those gates again, I'm back into the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, stay safe.
All right, not to get off this, not to get off the subject or nothing, but I saw a video yesterday. It's only 1 day old, and they were interviewing a guy on the streets of Los Angeles, and his whole face was tattooed. He's like an old hippie white guy, like a biker kind of a dude, and his whole face was tattooed. And they said, "Why are you here living on the street?" And he said, "Well, I was in Texas, but they give me $620 a month in general assistance, $200 a month in food stamps, He said, "I'm never leaving until they stop that." You know, and that's actually a good deal if you're a drug addict living on the street. $800 a month to start. You're good for like 5 days or 4 days or 3 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can just go steal bicycles or whatever.
Yeah. I can't believe the condition that we have in this country. I never thought it would get like this, but here we are.
I think you have a large enough channel. If everybody you know writes me in for president, I promise I will fix this. I know you've heard it before, but I swear to God about lying. I'll fix this shit in one day.
Well, George, that would give you a little bit of a push, but 33,000 votes, I don't think is going to quite get you the presidency.
God damn it. We were so close, though. If you would have had like 5,000 or 10,000 more followers, we could have done it. It was close. We almost made it.
Get Uncle Lou on board, me and a few others, and we'll try to pull our resources together for you.
You know, your new listeners don't know how far we go back. Me and you and Uncle Lou and Pete and some of those Miami channels. I can't even believe how lucky I got. How did I find you guys? You have totally absorbed my life. You and Pete and Lou and a couple of Miami channels and Tennessee Roadshow. I'm just like, and Bobby Durkins. I mean, just people keep saying go to my channel. I'm like, I can't even keep up with these guys, man. Come on, give me a break. I got my 5 favorite channels.
I would love if YouTube could tell me if they ran, they give us all sorts of analytics, but the analytic that I would like to see is I want total comments. And then I would love to be able to look up individuals and see how many times they've commented to the channel. Would love to see your comment total over the years.
You know, I've slowed down a lot, and it's going to continue. I'm going to keep slowing down because I'm getting older, but it was 600 comments a day back in the beginning, you know. Uncle Lou said that. He made a video about my videos and my comments. He's like, this is a funny dude, man. He's like, and I'm like that. I'm eclectic. They call it eclectic. You're eclectic,
yes,
you know?
You are.
Yeah, like when I find something I like, I'm all in. I did this with commercial law. I did it with business, finance. And then I just get bored and I drift away, go do something else, you know. Not with college football, but other stuff.
I'm kind of like that with TV shows. Like somebody will bring up a TV show and I'll be like, yeah, I used to love that TV show. And then all of a sudden I just kind of disappeared out of my life. And I don't even remember why I lost interest in it.
Right. I tried to watch this show about the people that get their memory wiped out when they go to work. And then when they're off work, they can't remember what happened. But I'm having a hard time following it, man. I think that's what we're really doing here in the world, you know? Like every night when we go to sleep, we call it dreams, but we're back in the real world. And then we come back to work and we don't remember none of that when we were at home shit, that other 8 hours, you know? Everybody sleeps a third of their life. Like, what do you really think goes on for that third of your life? You know, that's when you're home. You don't remember it because you went down the elevator or up the elevator or through that hallway door.
Yeah, I think I'm a little shy on the 1/3 sleeping ratio, though.
I know, because you only do 1/4. You're not like the rest of us.
I think I'm going to work on that tonight.
I'm down to a quarter. I'm down to a quarter now too. It happens when you get older, but you were blessed with that since childhood, evidently.
I suppose. It's starting to catch up with me, though.
You don't need 8 hours of sleep.
I'm sleeping a little bit more than I used to. That's for sure.
You know, when it comes to college football, I'm kind of weirded out on more people not being bullish on the Gators. You know, I'm like, how can you not be? All I hear is good news from every angle. We got your quarterback. We took your quarterback away from you.
That was the third-string quarterback. I think he might turn out to be a really good player, but it's not like he's the starter.
So you draft. So Ohio State drafts crummy ass quarterbacks like Joe Burrows to be their third string quarterback. I agree. I know you do that.
Yeah, that would work out for you. I'm sure you'd be okay with that.
That was a good shot.
I like Billy Napier. I think he's going to be a good coach there and do a nice job.
Who is Ryan Day still the coach at Ohio State?
Yes, he is.
And did Urban Meyer just come back to try to help him out a little bit?
Urban Meyer came back to help out on NIL. He's on some kind of NIL board.
Oh my God. It's just my head is spinning right now. I'm sorry. My head's spinning. Urban Meyer's back at Ohio State. It's too good to be true. You have to be the happiest man alive right now. Like, thank you, Jesus. We have Urban Meyer's going to help us in recruiting. He should have never been a coach in the first place. He should have just been a recruiter. Like, give me all the 5 stars. I'll be fine.
Well, those coaching jobs have worked out pretty well for him. He's made himself a pretty good living. All right, George, we're going to wrap it up tonight.
All right.
Appreciate you being here, man.
I'm glad he won us. I'm glad he won us a couple of national titles or whatever he did for us. I love that guy.
He did that. He knows how to win some natties.
Things are looking
George, your idea, every time you give me an idea, it's a really good idea, but it's usually something that's a little bit beyond me, but that I can do.
Yeah, I know.
This one I can do.
You know people in Iowa, you know people in California, you know people in Oregon. You need pizza joints and sports bars to put signs everywhere. MarkRogersTV. This is our channel. This is our voice. You know, like no one knows you're there.
All right, we'll get to work on that. I'll devote like an
hour a week. And then they can put it all up on the big screen. They can put it on the big screen on Wednesday night from 7 to 9 or whatever. You know.
There you go. All right, man.
And then all the people sitting at the table can call in.
That's it.
All right. It's just a thought.
Oh, it's a good one, George. You're full of them. That's for sure. George, you have a good night, man. Thank you.
You too. See y'all later.
All right. That will do it for tonight. I got a great idea from George. It was well worth a final phone call, as it always is with George, but especially tonight. All-time program rankings, coaches rankings, then position rankings, and on and on and on and on. Top 5 newcomers. I posted those videos. They're coming up here. I recorded those videos, I should say, today. Oklahoma, Ohio State, Alabama, and Florida State, and more to come. Right here, the voice of college football. Thank you for being here. We will see you soon. I promise. Get on Discord. Go to Patreon, search MarkRogersTV. Join us on Discord. I'm going to jump on there right this second and see what's been going on. Discord, Patreon, MarkRogersTV. Go to patreon.com, search MarkRogersTV, sign up. We get you the link. Join us on Discord. You'll be able to talk to Eric. And George isn't on Discord, but he has the link. He's on Patreon. So, George, you could be on Discord with us. And if you don't know what that is, it's just a chat. The chat we're in right now, you could be on that chat all the time. 24/7, 365. I see Tim on here right now. Yes. Tim's saying bye all, but Tim's on Discord. So good stuff. Appreciate it, everyone. We will see you soon.